Hi, I'm John Kasich, in tonight for Bill O'Reilly, who's on vacation, and we want to thank you for watching us. The threat of Islamic terrorists, that's our top story tonight, as Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld goes after critics who refuse to acknowledge just how dangerous the enemy is. That was the subject of a recent Talking Points memo.
Despite atrocity after atrocity, many people still don't understand the nature of the terrorist enemy. These killers have no humanity at all. They're Nazis. People who believe their brand of Islam requires them to murder infidels, babies, women, it doesn't matter. Just as many did not understand the Third Reich in 1936, 70 years later, much of the world doesn't understand Islamic fascism.
Yesterday, in a combative speech to thousands of veterans at the American Legion Convention, Rumsfeld suggested that critics have not learned the lessons of history and warned against appeasement.
Someone recently recalled one U.S. senator's reaction in September of 1939. Upon hearing that Hitler had invaded Poland to start World War II, he exclaimed, "Lord, if only I had talked to Hitler, all of this might have been avoided." Unquote. I recount that history because once again we face similar challenges in efforts to confront the rising threat of a new type of fascism. With the growing lethality and the increasing availability of weapons, can we truly afford to believe that somehow, some way, vicious extremists can be appeased?
Joining us now from Cincinnati, Paul Hackett, a Marine who served in Iraq and lost a congressional race last summer. And here in the studio, Dan Senor, the former spokesman for the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq. Who are the appeasers he's talking about? I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't recognize that the war in Afghanistan's got to be won, that Al-Qaeda's got to be snuffed out, that extremists have to be dealt with. Who's he talking about here?
He's talking about people who believe that we would be better off, John, if we just withdrew from our military engagements, whether they're in Iraq, whether they're in Afghanistan, whether it's a strong posture vis-a-vis Hezbollah.
But who's saying we ought to withdraw from Afghanistan? I haven't heard anybody say that.
There are people there are many left of center activists, political activists. MoveOn.org, as I talked about, that we should be scaling back our resources and places, our military engagements. They haven't been specific about Afghanistan, but they've been specific about Iraq.
I think that's
John, the important point is, look, we are on offense now. It's complicated, it's ugly, it's messy, and it involves some rough periods like we've experienced over the last few days and we'll be experiencing for the next couple of years. But the fact is some of the people we are fighting are sort of pushing back a little bit. It's sort of one step forward, two steps back. Yeah. Whether it's Hezbollah pushing back, whether it's the insurgency or the civil war going on in Iraq that's pushing back, whether it's threats against Karzai that are going on that are pushing back. And if we withdraw right now, we have some 140,000 troops in Iraq right now. Just take that engagement alone. If we withdraw, it would be the single largest engagement that was withdrawn immediately or according to a timetable in American military history. And imagine the signal that would send to the world. All right, it's an important moment.
All right. Now, Paul, I think you favor the immediate withdrawal, or you got to tell me what you favor. But here's the deal. If somebody favors immediate withdrawal, and I'm not a fan of this war, by the way, but if they want to just get out of there right away, the whole bottom could fall out over there, couldn't it? And throughout the whole region.
Well,
so
John,
is that a responsible place to be?
Well, first of all, John, suggesting that the whole bottom would fall out implies that somehow it hasn't fallen out. I mean, to have Herr Senor on your set as a military expert is somewhat of a joke. He knows absolutely nothing about the military. He's never served in the military. He's never been professionally schooled in the military.
Who are you talking about, Paul?
Is that me?
I'm talking about your guest, little Unterführer of propaganda, Mr. Senor there, who's an apologist for the failings of the CPA. I mean, he ought to be ashamed of his service or lack of service with the CPA.
Hey, Paul,
this is, wait,
hold on now. Now, look, I mean, this is not about ad hominem assassination here. I asked you a simple question.
Well, it is, because he's on there trying to argue for the military use in Iraq, which is just a joke. Because
Paul, there are a lot of people, hold on, Paul, there are a lot of people out there that believe, hold on, most of the Democrats, by the way, do not advocate immediate withdrawal because they worry about the consequences.
I don't advocate immediate withdrawal.
Then why are you...
I've actually always been a proponent that what the policy makers should do, the politicians, Democrats and Republicans, is face the reality that everything that can be accomplished with our military in Iraq has been accomplished. We should be not painting schools. We shouldn't be an intermediary or a beat
Should we be fighting a counterinsurgency? Paul,
and that's exactly what we're doing there. How many schools are we going to paint there, Senor?
Paul,
how many schools are we going to paint?
Well, hold on, Dan. Just hold on a second here, and I know this is emotional. Paul, I mean, the question is, do you favor immediate withdrawal? I can't figure out. I guess you're not for immediate withdrawal. And the reason you're not is because a lot of people worry about the consequences. But, Dan, let me ask you, this business of, hold on, Paul, hold on. Dan, what I get concerned about is the name calling. If you're not for staying in Iraq, somehow you're an appeaser. Now that name calling is not about how you debate a foreign policy, is it?
No, I agree.
Shouldn't they get off that and talk about policy and stop the name calling?
Look, there are very responsible, brave, courageous people who've served in Iraq in military and civilian roles. And they have a right to their opinion. Paul and I clearly have a difference of opinion. Paul, I've never questioned or challenged your service in Iraq. I hope you wouldn't question or challenge the credibility or the seriousness of, you let me finish, of mine. I spent about 1.5 years there.
Hold on, Paul.
But here's the point.
Hold on, Paul.
I do question your service because you lost $9 billion tax dollars over there.
But you know, Paul, here's a look. I mean, this is Paul. This is not about just interrupting. Now, look, Rumsfeld did say one thing. He said that, you know, there ought to stop the name calling and all the negativity. Amnesty International calls Guantanamo a gulag. I mean, that does border on, it doesn't border, it strikes me as being very anti-American to start accusing Americans of running gulags. You agree with that? That criticism's justified, isn't it?
Well, listen, I mean, he's the guy who's calling somebody like me an appeaser. Look, in this conversation, I'm the only guy who's fought the war on terrorism. I've looked it in the eye and I've vanquished it.
Let's get to the substance.
He's calling me un-American?
I'm going to let you make...
He's calling me un-American?
All right,
Paul raises an interesting important point.
This is it.
Has the bottom fallen out? It is really bad in Iraq.
Yes.
The question is, could it be worse? The answer is yes. 100 Iraqi civilian casualties a day could easily go to 1,000.
You know what the bottom line is? We got to stop the name calling and get the policy discussion and figure out how to fix this. I want to thank you both for being with us.